To the world, Carol Channing was unstoppable, the dazzling Broadway star who made audiences laugh, cry, and sing along. From Gentlemen Prefer Blondes to her iconic turn in Hello, Dolly, she became the very definition of theater magic. With her unmistakable voice, boundless energy, and trademark wit, she seemed larger than life. But behind the sequins and the spotlight was a very different story. Offstage, Channing's personal life was marked by 4 marriages, heartbreak, and long stretches of time away from home. In the middle of all that, she took on a role that few people talk about today, that of a mother. Her only child, a son named Carson, grew up far from the Broadway limelight. While his mother lived on stage, he built a very different kind of life, one that had little to do with Hollywood or show business. So, whatever happened to Carol Channing's son? Carol Elaine Channing was born on January 31st, 1921, in Seattle, Washington, and raised in San Francisco. From a young age, she was drawn to performance and storytelling. She would later remember sneaking into her mother's closet to try on clothes and costumes, practicing routines in front of a mirror, and entertaining family and neighbors with songs and impressions. After attending Lowell High School, she studied drama at Bennington College in Vermont, where her love for theater deepened. By the early 1940s, she was already appearing in Broadway productions, slowly making a name for herself with her unusual voice, quirky comedic instincts, and infectious energy. Her breakthrough came in 1949 when she starred as Lorelei Lee in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. The role of the ditzy yet sharp-witted gold digger became her signature, and the song "Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend" would forever be associated with her performance. Critics raved about her ability to command the stage, and she became a Broadway star overnight. But her career reached its true peak in 1964, when she debuted as Dolly Levi in Hello, Dolly. The show was a smash hit, and Channing's performance defined the role for generations. She played Dolly thousands of times over her career, often saying, "I never tire of Dolly. She's like an old friend I get to visit every night." Channing's contributions to the stage earned her multiple awards. Tony Award for Best Actress in a Musical, 1964 for Hello, Dolly. A Lifetime Achievement Tony Award, 1995. A Golden Globe Award and Oscar nomination for Thoroughly Modern Millie, 1967. A Grammy Award for her recording of Hello, Dolly. And if you are into classic Hollywood icons, amazing stories, and newly discovered insights, then hit that subscribe button. We are on our way to 10,000 subscribers, and your support will mean a lot to our channel. Despite her fame, Channing often spoke about the toll her career took on her personal life. Endless rehearsals, touring companies, and stage commitments meant long stretches away from home. Later in life, she admitted, "The stage was my home, but it kept me from being home with my son." Behind the applause and the spotlight, the sacrifices she made as a mother were quietly unfolding, a theme that would define the next chapter of her story. Behind the curtain of Broadway lights, Carol Channing's personal life was just as dramatic as the shows she starred in. Over the course of her long life, she married 4 times, each union shaping her story in different ways. Her first marriage came in 1941 when, at just 20 years old, she wed writer Theodore Nadish. It was a young and hopeful romance, but it didn't last long. The marriage ended after only a few years, leaving Channing focused once more on her career. In 1950, Carol married Alexander F. Carson, a Canadian football player known as the Murderous Axe for his toughness on the field. This marriage brought with it the biggest change in her personal life, the birth of her only child. In 1953, Carol gave birth to her son, Carson. But family life did not come easily. Carol's Broadway career was taking off, and her long hours of rehearsals, performances, and tours kept her away from home for long stretches. The marriage to Carson quickly grew strained and ended in divorce not long after their son was born. Following the split, young Channing was primarily raised by his father. Carol later admitted that her relentless career created distance between her and her child, confessing, "The stage was my home, but it meant being away from my son. That was my greatest heartbreak." In 1956, Carol married again, this time to her manager and publicist, Charles Lowe. Their marriage lasted over 40 years, and together they presented an image of stability. Yet privately, their relationship was rocky, and it eventually ended in separation and legal disputes in the late 1990s. Finally, in 2003, Carol found happiness in a surprising place with her childhood sweetheart, Harry Colligian. After reconnecting late in life, the two married, and Channing often described their time together as one of the most joyful chapters of her life. Through all of these changes, one figure remained a quiet constant in her story: her son, Channing Carson. While Carol lived her life under the spotlight, he grew up largely in its shadow, carving out a very different path for himself, far removed from the glitz and glamour of Broadway. While Carol Channing dazzled audiences as Broadway's golden star, her only son, Channing Carson, lived a life that could not have been more different. Born in 1953 to Carol and her second husband, Canadian football player Alexander Carson, young Channing's childhood was shaped by both privilege and distance. After his parents' divorce, he was primarily raised by his father. Carol's demanding Broadway career often kept her on the road, and though she loved her son, she admitted later in life that her relentless schedule created a painful separation. Carol also carried a complex personal history that shaped how the world saw her, and perhaps how her son understood identity. In her memoir, she revealed that her father was of mixed heritage with black ancestry on his side of the family. It was a truth she embraced with pride later in life, though it had been kept quiet during her early years in show business when Hollywood and Broadway were still heavily segregated by race. For Carol, it explained the resilience she carried into her career. For her son, it was a reminder of the layered and sometimes hidden stories within his family tree. As an adult, Channing Carson chose to distance himself from the turbulence of his parents' lives. He adopted the surname Lowe after his mother's third husband, Charles Lowe, who had helped raise him. The change was not just symbolic. It marked his independence and his desire to step into a world of his own making. That world became the world of art and commentary. Under the name Chan Lowe, he rose to prominence as an award-winning political cartoonist. His sharp and witty drawings appeared in major publications, including the South Florida Sun-Sentinel and the Christian Science Monitor. His work was incisive, satirical, and fearless in confronting politics and society. At one point, he was even nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, earning national recognition. Unlike his mother, who thrived under the spotlight, Chan Lowe chose a quieter existence. He rarely spoke about Carol in public, preferring to let his pen and his cartoons carry his voice. Yet, in his choice of career, using creativity to provoke thought and emotion, one can still see the influence of the mother who captivated audiences with her own artistry. Today, Lowe remains known for his work, not his famous lineage. In his own way, he has carried forward Carol's legacy of creativity, but on his own terms, far removed from the sequins and songs of Broadway. Even as the decades passed, Carol Channing never lost her sparkle. She continued to perform well into her later years, often reprising her beloved role as Dolly Levi and delighting audiences with her humor and vitality. In interviews, she spoke about how the stage gave her life, calling it her oxygen. In the 2000s, she found personal happiness when she reunited with her childhood sweetheart, Harry Colligian. The two married in 2003, and their companionship brought her comfort and joy after a lifetime of highs and lows. Together, they were active in promoting arts education and often appeared at public events as a pair. Her career earned her countless honors: Tony Awards, a Golden Globe, an Oscar nomination, and a Grammy. But more than the awards, it was her presence, her unforgettable voice, her comedic timing, and her ability to make audiences feel joy. That secured her place as one of Broadway's most iconic figures. Carol Channing passed away on January 15, 2019, just days shy of her 98th birthday. Tributes poured in from across the entertainment world. Broadway theaters dimmed their lights in her honor, and colleagues remembered her not only as a star, but as a pioneer who brought a unique kind of charisma to the stage. Behind the public mourning, her legacy lived on in quieter ways, in the family she left behind, including her son, Chan Lowe, who had built his own career in a very different world. Carol Channing's legacy lives on in the spotlight and in the quiet corners of family life. On stage, she remains immortal, her voice, her smile, and her iconic Dolly Levi preserved in recordings, photographs, and memories. Broadway remembers her as a pioneer, one of the few performers whose very presence could transform a theater into something magical. But her legacy is also carried forward in a more private way through her only son, Chan Lowe. While Carol thrived under the lights of Broadway, Chan chose a quieter life built on pen and paper. As a Pulitzer Prize-nominated political cartoonist, his work appeared in major newspapers like the South Florida Sun-Sentinel and the Christian Science Monitor. Even after leaving daily newspaper work, he has continued creating cartoons and illustrations, teaching, and sharing his perspective through art. Today, Lowe lives in New England, where he remains active in both the arts and local commentary. He married and has children of his own, giving Carol grandchildren who grew up far from the glitter of Broadway, but surrounded by creativity in their own right. In this way, the family tree branches into new generations, each one touched in some way by Carol's boundless energy and artistry. Unlike his mother, Chan Lowe rarely speaks about Carol publicly, yet his career and family life reflect the same values she held dear: resilience, creativity, and the courage to follow one's own path. While Carol Channing's name will forever shine in the lights of Broadway, her quieter legacy is written in the lives of her son and grandchildren, who carry forward her spark in their own unique ways. In the end, Carol's story is not just about the thousands of ovations she earned, but also about the family who remembers her, not as a legend, but simply as Mom and Grandma. Carol Channing's story is one of brilliance and contradiction. On stage, she was unstoppable, the voice, the laughter, the sparkle of Broadway itself. Offstage, her life was more complicated, filled with marriages, sacrifice, and a son who grew up in the shadow of her fame, but chose a very different kind of spotlight. Her only child, Chan Lowe, didn't follow the path of theater or Hollywood. Instead, he carved out his own legacy in political cartoons, using pen and ink to make people think rather than sing. And in his quiet way, he and Carol's grandchildren carry forward the spark of creativity that defined her life. So perhaps Carol Channing's greatest role wasn't just Dolly Levi or Lorelei Lee, but that of a mother and grandmother whose influence continues in ways the world will never see under Broadway's lights. But what do you think? Was her true legacy on the stage, or in the family who remembers her most, simply as Mom and Grandma? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more untold stories behind the headlines.